Welcome back, and thank you very much for choosing to stay with us on New Day. Remember, it is a Feel Good Friday, and of course, our theme of music is reggae music. So if you do have requests on the same, you can always send them in, and we'll play them during our music segment. And now we're going into a very important part of this particular program, where we are discussing emotional infidelity. And interestingly enough, I am joined by two gentlemen who are really qualified in their field, and I'd like to introduce you to them. Starting with my nearest right, I have Samson Mung'athia. Once again, I always have a problem saying that, but yes, fantastic. You're a transformational speaker, and thank you very much for joining us today. And of course, I have Samuel Kanja, who is a life coach. And first things first, how is your morning today?
I think my morning is quite great. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's always an happy moment for me to be here on a Friday to share just some nuggets and thoughts with our viewers. I'd really I appreciate for the opportunity. The day is good. Other than being chilly, I'm doing good.
Fantastic. And maybe yourself, Sam, and I know there's two Sams today in studio, but yourself, Samuel, even as you tell me how your morning has started and kicked off today, you can just begin by talking about what emotional infidelity really is all about.
Okay, my day is good. It's another opportunity to laugh life and live it. That's usually one of my philosophies, just to make the best out of every other day that I get. And maybe going directly to the question you have asked about emotional infidelity, it's not a topic that people know much about it, but in layman's language, the way people talk about it, it's a topic that is affecting many relationships, even many families and all that. But in the real sense, it's about being engaged emotionally with other people who are not primary to the relationship, but it doesn't have to involve intimacy. Intimacy here is sexual, maybe advances or something like that. It's like when you are sharing so much about yourself, what you should be sharing with your partner, you share with some other person who now gets your attention. And even if there are interest between the two of you, maybe it doesn't go to the advanced stages, but it can. So it is called emotional infidelity because you are taking your emotions to another person who primarily does not deserve to get all that from you. Yeah.
Okay, there's something that's very interesting whereby this conversation has sparked up. Maybe a couple is together, they've been together for some time, and one partner realizes that emotionally maybe they're not as connected as they should be. And the other partner, well, the same partner asks this partner, but there's nothing going on. We're just talking, we're just friends. I'm sharing with them and there's no physical contact. So really, where's the harm in having any other person sharing with them your emotions and it's not physical? Is there harm, or is it actually advisable but to a certain extent? How would you say?
Okay. The major challenge we have in most of the relationship is not how they are right now. It is how they started. When a relationship is not founded on a strong foundation, especially the issue of commitment, the issue of trust, which when the two of them are combined, they bring what we call vulnerability. When there is no vulnerability, you will find that even when there is no problem, you don't share intimate stuff, deep stuff with each other. You go share out there and your life becomes mechanical in a relationship, in a marriage, where you just share about finances, about the kids, just that. But the deeper issues that you are struggling with, you don't share because that's not the way you started. Meaning, you may have got married or got into a relationship by circumstances. And changing that to an adult is not very easy because we say habits in adults are harder to change than in young people because adults are not growing as fast and they are not more open to change than children who are maybe teenagers or, school-going children when you look at the growth stages. So is it okay? It depends also on the intentions. In some circumstances, it may be okay. In some other circumstances, it may not be okay. So the key aspect here is what is the motivation, what is the intention of having that other person. This person needs to be of the other gender because if it's of the same gender, that is not emotional infidelity. I think we need to be clear on that. So about it being good or bad, the major issue here is what is the intention and what is the background of it.
Maybe I can loop you in, perhaps, Samson. He's talked about understanding what your intention is, but in the beginning, perhaps it's very harmless, right? And then eventually, whatever happens, you continue to be so comfortable with this person. At what point then does it cross over from being emotional infidelity, and then there are red flags that one person needs to be aware of and now take a back seat before it becomes physical infidelity?
Of course, I think emotional infidelity by itself is a red light that you shouldn't really engage, because it's a pointer to something that is not happening well somewhere. Remember, this is a situation whereby you are sharing too much that you shouldn't be sharing with your partner, but you are taking it out to somebody else who is not your partner or your spouse for that case. So at this point, if you find yourself in that position whereby you are divulging so much information, you feel so secure sharing your personal issues, your personal problems, the challenges that are going through, maybe even in your current relationships, you take them out there to that other person. It shouldn't tell you something, because at the end of the day, one of the signs of this kind of infidelity is you find yourself attracted to this other person, and over time, remember, it's something that you start very innocent, basic conversations, maybe it's a colleague at workplace, a friend, you're just talking. Over time, it will evolve to a point where you will be having what is called sexual tension. You are attracted to that person to some point, because you have given them your heart, your mind, your everything. And at the other time, or the same time, you will find yourself also you're draining away, or you're drifting away from either your partner or your spouse, because again, you are disengaging from them to engage to this other person. So it should be really a point of concern when you find yourself you are so much emotionally attached to somebody who is not your spouse or your partner.
Samson, there's something you've talked about, and I'd like you to talk about it a little bit more, because you said being open and so comfortable with that particular person who's not your partner and sharing with them things about maybe yourself. Let's talk about women versus men, and I'm really happy to see that today we have a panel of men who can probably give us a perspective from the other side. Do you find that women are more prone to being open to any other person other than their partner, and at the same time, do men find it more difficult to open up generally when in a relationship, or is it something that comes naturally? How would you say the different plays out between the two genders?
I think we are made differently. And one, I'll say, for men, naturally, it's very earned to share. At times, we find men, because of the society, the culture, the way you've been brought up, you're told, kufa kimwanaume. So you find people the men, they bottle up their emotions. They don't really share their feelings. Somebody is going through either challenges in marriage or challenges in relationships at the job place, and then they don't really share it out. They're just silent, keeping it to themselves and holding it back. Now, on the contrary, for ladies of the female gender, is that they are wired to talk. They will talk and talk and talk, and that's why you find also depression is so high among men, because men keep it to themselves. You're having so many issues, but you're keeping them to yourself. You don't share. So for ladies, they share a lot. But when it comes to the issue of emotional infidelity, this is a whole different story, because you find you're not really sharing as a result of the way we are made, but you're sharing because you're finding some interest in that other person, or simply they are having some interest in you, in that they can give you time, they can give you their space. You have to talk to them because they are really feeling you to some extent. So in this case, it's not really about the gender, it's about an individual, because you will find yourself in that space, whether you're a man, you're a lady. At the end of the day, when you find yourself so much attracted to that other person, or sharing so much with that other person, then it means there is something in between you that if you don't check out, it will go to the extreme.
Yeah. I'm really happy that you mentioned something concerning time, and Samuel, perhaps you can comment on this. Is it to say that then perhaps one of the parties, either the man or the woman, feels like they don't get enough time from their current partner, and someone else is willing to give that time to them? Is it then a time question and an attention question? Remember, we are living in COVID-19 times, and people are busy trying to make a living and do all these things, and there's everything else happening in their lives. But then again, we are saying that emotional infidelity can come out based on, you feel you're not getting something in this particular relationship. So talk about the importance, especially about on time.
Okay, I think I like what Samson have talked about, especially the bit he connected, how emotional infidelity can turn to, physical infidelity, or what we normally know as infidelity, where maybe sexual activity is involved and people are more intimate and all that. And this is usually a process. It's not very easy for emotional infidelity to happen in a day, one-off. Mostly it's a process where people get so close, people get so comfortable, people get more vulnerable with each other, and you find that in most cases, one party is the one which is needy. Really, it's not very common to have a coincidence where two people are sharing almost the same about their lives out there. And the person who is being shared with sometimes feels entitled, maybe even later, to get more attention, even when this other person have already completed sharing what was ailing them. So the issue of timing depends again on what exactly is this person aiming to get. For example, would you say that for someone to be unfaithful emotionally, it requires you to be in a particular state of life? Not necessarily. The key aspect here is all about the value system. On what values is a relationship founded on? Because you'll find you are giving someone all the time, you are giving them all the attention, you just finished having a 1 hour call with them, but the next minute, they have another 2 hours call with the other person who is not part of the relationship. For me, I believe when two people have chosen to be together and committed to be together, the value system that dictates that relationship. And we have to start asking ourselves about responsibility. And for me, that's one of the key values that myself as a person and my company, we operate on. Responsibility. Taking that responsibility, because by the fact that the two of you are together and none of you was forced to be in that relationship, when things are not working, and especially in a marriage setup, it's always good to take responsibility and try to make things work. Now it becomes worse when one party wants to improve the relationship and make it work, but the other one has switched off, and they are now out there looking for options. Now you'll find there are even multiple emotional infidelities, meaning it's not even one. And that's where you find even the issue of the mobile phone. People touching the other person's phone is a problem. Why? Not because of the finances or the M-Pesa and all that. Mostly is, what will you know about me? Even if I deleted the message, what if another message comes in, which I don't want you to see? So I think it's all about the value system. Maybe I can give an example of where maybe the timing may be an issue. Sometimes a couple may go through a very hard time, and they go through that together. And then one party manages to come out of that. Maybe they both lost jobs, and then one gets a job. And now you find that instead of supporting the other person, they kind of intimidate them. One person may lose a relative, and this other person is not empathetic enough. So what will happen? The emotional infidelity now will not start like even anything serious. It is someone sharing with another person how I lost my mother, how I lost my father, how I lost my job, and then this other person starts coming in. With the time, you now start getting the updates of what is not happening. Remember when you were starting it, there was no problem. But now as you continue, problems start arising. We are no longer having sex. We are no longer doing this. We have not talked for a week. He is now working abroad. He has gone to another town. Now, this other person now gets excited. Yeah, now I have an opportunity. So it is quite a complex situation. So it cannot be said to be a linear that this causes this, then from this, there's a lot of mathematics around it. Yeah.
There's something you've talked about. Those seems to be some of the signs of emotional infidelity, and perhaps you can also mention a couple more signs that maybe someone needs to be privy of to now begin to question themselves. Okay, I think there's something going on. What are the telltale signs? So you don't have to wait until it's too late and something has happened. What would you actually say those are?
Okay, I think from a counseling point of view, I would wish to say that human beings are complete. Every human being is complete. A child is complete, an adult is complete. But one thing we also need to understand, in that completeness, human beings change. For better, for worse. Rarely do you get people remaining the same. People either get better or worse. Meaning, whoever you are in a relationship with or in marriage with can change. They can become better, they can become worse. At a particular time, they can remain the same. Are you ready for that psychologically? Are you aware that that can happen? Because it can. And many people are so frustrated because of the expectations and the outcomes having a deviation, and a very wide deviation. Today you get married maybe to someone who doesn't drink, and you hate someone who drinks, then they start drinking. How do you handle that? You are married by someone, maybe you even had sex the first night, during honeymoon. This person now becomes, unfaithful. How do you handle that? So I think to understand that human beings are not static, behaviors change, behaviors improve, and that calls for what? It calls you to be open, to be more observant, and maybe a better word is to be skeptical. Even if you love this person to heaven, always be skeptical. Have a third eye, which doesn't look at things from the front. It is, a compound one. It looks at all the angles. Because many people you find, after many years, they start now connecting the dots. Oh, so when this happened, this was happening. Now you start blaming yourself. I wish I had known. So
I really like what you're saying, Samuel, and I want to loop you in, Samson. I mean, being skeptical about perhaps a partner you have and being willing to look at them in all the third eye, all angles, and saying that, okay, this is who I have and I'm willing to go this route, this other route, whatever the case may be. Just talk to me a little bit about, maybe still on the same topic, being willing to take your partner the way they are and however way they turn out. How can you as an individual get to that place? Because sometimes you find the younger generation, as they are working on their relationships and they see this person as they are, they might not be willing to see all sides of the coin.
I think one, we need to understand that life is always evolving. It's like my colleague has said, life is never static. It's nothing that is cast on stone. May it be even in terms of age, physical appearance, and all these other things. So you need to come in a relationship with an open mind, knowing that this person I've met today, 10 years, 20 years down the line, they won't be the same. Either career-wise, physically, emotionally, psychologically, they are either going to improve or deteriorate based first on how you handle them as a person, and also based on the environment that they're exposing themselves or you're exposing them to. So for me, coming to a relationship is you should come with an open mind. And then again, there is an issue that I think we have discussed on this show at some point is you need to have a candid conversation at the start, at the onset. And this candid conversation should be very open. People go into relationship with an kind of a conversation that is very naive. You talk about 10 years, we'll be having a house, 20 years, we'll be having this, 30 years, we'll be having that. Yeah. But then you don't look at the other side of the coin and ask yourself, like we were talking, I think last Friday, we were talking about the issue of not having children in a marriage. You don't ask. We talk about 3 years down the line, we should be having a firstborn. 5 years, we'll be having a secondborn. Then you don't look at the other side of the coin and ask, what if they don't come? So at the end of the day, this conversation that we should be having at the onset of a relationship should be very candid, not only to be positive, but also to look at the possibility of a negative that will come. And then if this comes, how do we handle it? Now, if you do that kind of a conversation, life will be easy. It will be hard, but then it will be very easy to manage and to maneuver. But if you find yourself already in it, you never discussed, and then this thing happens. So what happens next? You react. This one reacts differently, this one reacts differently, and then you find now you have certain chaos, you have certain issues, and now lead now to those other issues, either the emotional infidelity, physical, or whatever the gender infidelity that we know, or they're going to divorce and kind of ending the relationship.
Okay, there's something I want to talk about. I know it might be a little bit sensitive, but this topic is on what you mentioned, on being able to allow your partner or your spouse to go through your phone, right? And, having the fear sometimes that, I don't want them to go through my phone, or they have many passwords, face recognition. everything that you can think of. So where do you actually begin? For men, I don't know. Sometimes you find that a partner might not want their partner to actually go through their phone. What is the underlying problem? Is that always the case? And do you think that it should be that everyone should be open enough to put their phones and everything else on the table, especially if they're in a serious relationship, and especially for the younger generation also who are working towards getting married?
I think you need to get it right from the word go. I know the phone issue is a very emotive issue because we say phone is private, but the phone is private to you, and of course not now to the general public or the other people you're relating with. But the moment you have come into a committed kind of an engagement, in this case, let's talk about the married couples, of course, because now the dating part, of course, it's a process again. Because the person tends to open gradually. The first day you meet, of course, you don't expect to get the password to the M-Pesa, the password to the phone, and all these other things. But it's gradual. So with time, of course, if you have gotten to a point where you're getting married, then again, I don't see why you should be having issues being open in as far as phone is concerned, because it shows you're concealing something, you're hiding something. If you are living with that person, you have given yourself to them, they have given themselves to you, then I don't see the reason as to why you should be having this issue of don't touch my phone, don't do this, don't do that. Because what it does is this, it's very simple. It could be very innocent, nothing wrong happening, nothing bad, you are not hiding anything. But if you show you are protecting your data, your phone, your laptop, nobody can access maybe your emails or your private browsing history and all these other things, it starts breeding kind of mistrust. You know, this other person, there could be nothing going on, nothing at all, but this other person will start questioning you. What is it that you're hiding?
That you're hiding. But then again, sorry to interrupt you, Samson, you must remember that this is a situation, you're talking about marriage, but it starts off with the dating, especially when you're courting to marry. And they might argue that, but we were okay when we were dating, and you weren't accessing some of these things. So why now? Why do you want to see my things now?
Of course, that's what I'm saying. You have to set everything right from the word go. Because let me just take you back now to that point of dating. When you're dating somebody, and I understand we're living in also very different times. You know, long time ago when our parents was doing these processes, they could tell you, no, we met, we did this for maybe 2 years, 3 years. We're in a situation whereby people are meeting 1, 2, 3 months down the line, they're already married or they're living together, or you know, something happens, circumstances put them together at the end of the day. So you have to get it right from that point of dating. We're dating this person, what do they like, what don't they like? And then, of course, because it's a gradual process, get them to open up. Can I access their phones? Can I access their private kind of information? Can I access their maybe laptop? Can I access details about their business if they're in business and all these other things? So it's a process. Now, if somebody is not willing to open up during that process, or there is something that they're kissing away from you, then it's a red flag that you should note from that point, address it before you get into the relationship, because it's likely to breed out something bigger than you're seeing at that point. Yeah.
I really like what you've said, Samson, and I'm hoping a lot of our viewers are actually watching because it's a very sensitive topic, and to hear it coming from men, because many times, apparently, it's the men who actually say, no, I think it's not necessary for maybe my partner, my wife, or my girlfriend to access my phone. But I have a question for you, Samuel, and the question is, of course, does infidelity, of course, emotional infidelity, is it grounds enough for a divorce? I mean, we're living in times when people clearly are leaving or walking out of marriages as easy as maybe whatever the case may be. So is it enough grounds to actually say, because of this, then I think we should make this next move to separate?
I think before I answer you, I would first want to contribute to the phone issue.
Yes,
you said
please.
it is done, so
Yes.
yeah, I think it's quite, whenever you see a discussion that people never agree on, that should tell you it's a critical issue, which needs critical thinking and critical action. And some of these things are individual based. And personally, I would say there's something called individuation. When you're in a relationship, when you are married, you remain yourself. You have your life. You hear people saying 1 + 1 = 1. That is from the spiritual world when you get married. But you still remain with your work. You remain with your, your responsibilities. You remain with your friends. And that's why you find many people, maybe immediately you start living together, you start trying to bring many things together, but later you realize you have lost your life. Some people even stop working and come and you start maybe doing things together. But you forgot your interest may not be the interest of the husband or the wife. So I think, as Samson was talking about, there needs to be a candid conversation. Who is me without you? That should always be the starting point. Because you are already a complete person without the other person. And if you get into a relationship for someone to complete you, then that is already a problem. You know? So many people forget themselves when they get married. Many people lose their friends when they get married or when they're in a very serious relationship. And when it doesn't work, they easily get even into depression. Why? They have no one to lean on because they threw out every other person and they came to the life of this person as if it's a half plus a half equals to 1. But it is 1 plus 1 equals 2, but in perspective, it is 1 because you are living one life. So how does that apply to the phone issue? A phone is called a personal gadget. Sometimes it's not about infidelity. You may not be wanting the partner to check your phone now and then, even because of other things. Maybe you are just at the idea level and you may want them to know them when you have already got somewhere. It may be a conversation with your parents, who are the in-laws to the other person. And you may not want them to pick the tones of your mother, of your father, about them. Instead of deleting all these messages, sometimes it's always good also to respect the space of other people. Vulnerability doesn't mean that you have everything of my life, I have everything of your life. There's that privacy that everyone needs to have. But in a marriage setup, these are things that people need to agree on. And what does it depend on? How mature are the two of you? Unfortunately, a mature person usually looks for a mature person to get married to. An immature person gets an immature person. That's why you find two immature person, most likely they bring up children who are also immature. And the cycle continues. What do I mean by this? You are lucky if you are mature, you get a mature person. Because the issue of the phone will never be an issue. Because it will be there, it is ringing, they don't pick, and they are not worried. And when they know the password, they don't go through your messages. They just, someone is calling you, can I check this? Because you people, you understand each other, there's trust, and there's commitment. Now we come to the emotional infidelity. Should it break a relationship? Or, maybe people are already engaged. Should it break a marriage? I think when two people are willing to work things out, there's nothing that cannot work. Because nothing is cast on stone. There can always be progress. But it only works when the person who is problematic or the one who seems to be the one causing all this, first is humble, there is humility, that I have done that. They accept I have done that. Then number 2, they are willing to change. Because a sorry is not enough. When a sorry is said 5 times, then it becomes an abuse. So many sorries can become abuses. So for that reason, the best thing is, whenever you are wrong, take responsibility. It soothes the heart of the other person. But when you are the one who is wrong, and then you start using defense mechanisms, you start doing stonewalling, you start saying you are being criticized, all those things now make the other person very aggressive. And they even start planning to leave you before you leave them. And then it becomes so chaotic, and that's how people get even into depression, domestic violence, and they even kill each other. Not because of something that happened this morning. Rarely does it happen like that. It is one party has tried for so long to be strong. And for sure they have been very strong. But at some point, it gets to the maximum, I can be strong. We call it the breaking point. And these people cannot contain it any longer. It becomes a volcano.
Right. And Sam, I do understand that different people have different breaking points.
Yes.
We cannot all be the same.
That's true.
But do you believe then that at the point of remorse where you are genuinely sorry for whatever it is, either emotional infidelity or maybe any other type of infidelity, which we will discuss shortly, do you believe that sometimes it seems to be that one partner takes advantage? They might be genuinely saying they're sorry, but I don't know, they keep on doing the same thing over and over again. And I'll give you an example of perhaps maybe a couple who's been together for many, many years. perhaps ready for marriage, and there's been emotional infidelity, and in one instance or so there might have been even infidelity, and they have always been remorseful. They genuinely do apologize to their partner, and their partner has always seen that indeed, I think they have seen the light, and they continue to stay in the relationship. At what, then don't you think that there are people who do take advantage of that situation? And what could be their problem? Is it that they have a problem? Is it something that stems from childhood, or it's just a character thing? Where is the problem?
I would wish to say there's something called self-awareness. We need first to know ourselves. By knowing ourselves, we build our self-esteem. And when you have adequate self-esteem, you feel competent to be in that relationship. You feel worthy to be in that relationship. You don't feel like someone needs to be merciful. You know, someone is doing you a favor to love you. You know, you don't feel like that. And that's why you find how a relationship starts. What brought us together? Is it that you got pregnant and I took you? And for that reason, I can always intimidate you. So it starts somewhere. And you'll find when you are already aware of yourself, you become assertive. And when you are assertive, you can speak your mind. And when you speak your mind, the other person also feels they have been given an opportunity to do the same. Now the challenge comes in when I'm the one who is hurting, but the other person doesn't bother. The more I am hurting, the more they are exercising the emotional infidelity. So then the other question is, what is the extent and the intensity of this emotional infidelity? Because sometimes it may be, a lady tells me, I miss you. I'm not the one who wrote that. Anyone can tell me anything. I love you. You know, they can call you sweetheart. The issue is, how do I respond to that? If I say I miss you too, that is fair enough. But if something else is said, and then I reply it in a way that, you know, shows some, you know, connotations and all that, then, so I think also it's good, before judging, let's understand the situation. And when someone is sorry, let's give them a chance. But when they misuse that chance, the problem is that rebuilding trust is quite tasking and demanding. So I think the best thing here is just to understand, and also to keep evaluating relationships and marriages. And where you feel you are in disagreement, the two of you, it is like two people who are blind and you are leading each other. The best thing is to go to a coach, to go to a counselor, and seek some professional help. And again, don't involve people who may be too close to you, because sometimes they may not tell you the truth as it is because of what we call a dual relationship. And you never know their intention about your relationship. Yeah.
Very interesting. Samson.
Yes.
There's something that Samuel mentioned, which is about, you know, two responsible people or two immature people getting into a relationship. But there's another narrative that's been thrown out there that opposites attract. And I don't know how true it is, just to see your reaction.
Not only maturity. It is on other things.
And you'll find young people also saying that, you know, I'm with this person, maybe, again, unfortunately, maybe this person likes to have a lot of fun, but this other person is more settled, and they get attracted to this person. And the one who is more settled is like, well, you know, they somehow really do love this person and would want to stay with them. And they're different, and they're just absolutely two different people from two different worlds, but they've somehow come together. This narrative on opposites attracting each other, is it a fallacy? Is it real? Where do they meet?
I think that one we should leave it to physics alone. Let's leave it at that point of magnets, opposites and the likes, because basically in an ideal world, thinking about it, before you get somebody into marriage, there is a point where you met. Then there is something you share in common. You can't just meet somebody and then tomorrow there is nothing in common you have in between and then you're together. Now for this case, if maybe it's person who've been meeting regularly, maybe at a social club, then you share the social club, the whatever you enjoy there and that thing. Maybe it could be in a church, in another setup. So there must be a point of commonality that you have the two of you. It can't be that you're picking somebody from the extreme side and then the other from the extreme. And somehow they get to meet. If you meet from the extremes, you will cross each other along the way. So the fact is, and this one should also be noted, is not, I'm not talking about personality, because you find somebody who is outgoing, just vocal and all that, and then they are married to somebody who's very silent, very cool. I'm not talking about that aspect of personality because you're different. But then there is that thing that is common that unites you, the two of you. So if it's about the personality issue, that's a different story. It's something that you can manage, you can handle and do this and that with it. But then there is the behavior part, the principle part. What are your principles? What's your value system? What do you like? What do you hate? What drives your life? That's the focus point. So you can't get somebody whose values are totally different from yours and again expect you're compatible. That's why we talk about the issue of compatibility. Before you settle down with this person, know that at least they love some quite big percentage of what I love. They hate what I hate. Maybe they are driven by these values and they have their virtues as A, B, C, D. And my virtues are like this. Then that way it's very easy to manage. But if you find yourself in a situation whereby maybe by coincidence, because we talk about chances, a chance happens that you are in it together, your values are North Pole, South Pole, then you will have so many issues that you can't manage. Yeah.
And even that question then, that sometimes you find young couples are asked, why are you together? Why do you love this person? Do you really love this person? And what is it that you love about them? And then either that question gets you off guard and you have no answer whatsoever, or you just say they make me happy, or I just like how they do their things. Is there a right way to answer that question?
One, I think love is personal. It's a very personalized kind of a thing, because how I might define love might be very different from how you might define it at the end of the day. But also going into the same point where you have said it makes me happy or she makes me happy. Life is not about happiness. You won't be happy all the time. There will be challenging moments. There will be tough moments. So when you're choosing a life partner, don't look at the positive part alone. It goes back to what I was saying. Look also at the other side of life. When this person is sad, when they are hungry, how do they react? When they are not in their jovial mood, how do they behave? Maybe when they're not at their best, what is their worst? So you should also be looking at these factors like this. Defining love, or what puts you together, of course, there must be a common point of interest at the end of the day. But if you have just come together because of either infatuation or just, I've liked the way you appear, I've liked the way you dress, I've liked your beauty or your handsomeness, these are things that are going to fade. You should base love on something deeper than the physical appearance, something deeper than the social setup that you are in of making you happy or making you jovial or taking you to trips and all these other things. Because you find with the time, those things will fade away. You get into marriage, children will come, responsibilities will shift, the physical strength will also fade away with time. So at the end of the day, it should be something deeper. What connects you? And this should be the focus for life. It's not the present moment. It's not what they are doing. It's not who they are at the moment. It's not their title, their position. It should be about the end point. Where do we want to go in life? Irrespective of whether things are going to be good or bad. What is it that we have in common at the end of the day?
All right, Samuel, I'd like to, let's assume now this emotional infidelity has been happening for some time, and now it's gotten to the point where it's actual infidelity in the relationship. The partner has not been aware that this has been happening, and then they come and find out, and the partner is genuinely sorry and they're remorseful and they want to change their ways. Really, at what point, where is the breaking point, where is the straw that breaks the camel's back, that you make a step, or make a decision that this relationship will not work? Because I'll give you two different examples of perhaps stories I came across whereby, one partner who has been, who's definitely not been faithful in their relationship, genuinely feels that I don't think this is reason enough to leave each other. I love this person still, and I'm still having all these other relations going on out there. They don't know, but even if they did find out, I would genuinely be sorry, and I'd try and keep them because I know I see a future with this person. I see them being my husband, the father of my children. They look at the good things and they tick. But as far as infidelity is concerned, they feel like that's not enough to break a relationship. Why? I mean, at the end of the day, it's just physical relation. So what would you make of that?
Okay, I think very first, I think there's a point that came from Samson about many things keep changing, and we had already talked about that. And this is where people need to be very much aware about the same. But again, many people, when we are going to a relationship or marriage, we don't have goals. And when you don't have clear goals, then anything can make you leave that relationship and you are ready to start another one, especially where maybe children are not involved. And people can keep going circles and all that. And the major issue is that if we don't look at marriage or a relationship as a primary part of our life, you may find we are giving more time to work, more time to our talents, more time to our investments, and that denies us a moment to be with the family. That is the wives, the husbands, and even the children. So the key question is, by the time you are getting into this, what was your objective? Because where there is no point of doing something, there is no purpose. Where there is no purpose, then everything can become painful. But where there is purpose, pain is manageable. And everything is a risk. Even for us to be here, it is a risk. Because I don't know what I'm saying, if it's making sense or not. For you to get married is a risk that there can be divorce. Otherwise, you cannot be divorced if you never got married. Going to school is a risk of failing exams. You know, being alive is a risk of dying. Life is all about risks because of the uncertainties of life. And then we cannot be breaking everything which is not working. Sometimes we can mend the broken pieces. And for those who are Christians, I do believe God also made the broken pieces. But for him to mend the broken pieces, sometimes he requires us to bring those pieces. And bringing those pieces is confessing, accepting, and repenting. Not only to him, but to each other. But because of the ego, because of the pride, because of the connections you have, you feel like even without you, I can do it. And then we confuse the relationships with the ability to provide. And you can say, I can do it on my own. I can educate the kids on my own. Then a few years down the line, you realize what you did was wrong. But again, you cannot tell other people because you feel ashamed. So I think the key thing is the purpose. Why am I in this? It makes you to endure more. Now we come to the point. At what point do you say it cannot work? For me, I think it's more of the prolonged, you know, where someone does so intentionally, people are very deliberate, and actually they speak about it, they express it, they are not remorseful, they are not genuine, they are not committed to bring change, and then they justify whatever they have done. So the question is, you as a person, and I think there's one philosophy I usually have about mostly relationships, because you have had people saying, you give your 50, I give my 50, we get 100. But in a relationship, 50 plus 50 is less than 50. In a relationship, 100 plus 100 is more than 100%. You see? So the question is, have you given your best? Is your mind clear? Because again, the person who is getting all this harm or hurting from the relationship which has emotional infidelity is the one who has more responsibility, you know, to make decisions which are right for themselves. Sometimes you don't focus on the other person because maybe they are not ready to make any adjustments. The questions you need to ask yourself are hard questions. If I leave this marriage, if I leave this relationship, what does it mean to me? Not to them. Many people look at to them. They are going to get married again. They are going to suffer. They don't have this. No. Sometimes you get to a point of loving yourself and taking care of yourself more. And you ask yourself, what does this mean for me? Then avoid emotional decisions. Never make a decision about leaving any relationship, even your work, that is employment or a business, without coming down. Be composed. Don't do it emotionally. Because when your emotions are high, and especially where intimacy is involved, that's how people kill each other. The crimes of passion, that's how they happen. Because no one can imagine my wife was with so and so. My husband was with so and so. So we need first to avoid emotions and use logic and reason, you know. And then we ask ourselves, what have I not done? If I have done everything, what are they supposed to do? But let's not do it like haphazardly, because getting back there may also be a big challenge. You might actually be mistreated more. If you leave a relationship and what made you leave it has not changed, coming back, you will definitely be the weaker party. And when you are the weaker party, the other party will take more advantage of you. But if you leave a relationship because of something which was not there, but now it is there, meaning there has been a resolution, what happens? It will definitely work because you are equal at that point. So I think I still go back to understanding yourself. Many people are not aware of who they are. Tell people to write a paragraph about themselves. They cannot. And that's where we have problems. So people are getting into marriage and into relationships with a name of the other person making me happy. No, happiness is not brought by other people. And that's a misconception. You choose your happiness. If you depend on others to be happy, you might never be happy because it depends on them. Yeah.
Samson, on the tail end of this conversation, one thing that has stood out is really self-awareness, self-awareness, self-awareness. So how then can people begin that journey of becoming more self-aware of every aspect of their life?
One, I think it begins, and now before even I comment about that, allow me to mention something regarding your previous question.
Yes.
Because you're saying there are people who are not, you do it repeatedly again, and maybe you are showing remorse, it's okay, but you're doing it repeatedly. One, for people already married, in marriage, it will take some time, of course, it will take effort, but they should address it. But if you're in a relationship and somebody is either cheating on you and doing all these things behind your back, and you know and you see, don't wait for another sign. Just leave at that moment, because you know that there is this notion people get like, let me get married to him, I will change him. Now, it's not your business to change anybody's life. Changing your life alone is very hard. So don't go in this with this notion of he will change along the way, she will change along the way. And there is one thing I tell people: when someone shows you who they are at the very first time, believe them. Don't buy time at they will change along the way. Just believe them. The way they have shown you, if they can be unfaithful to you during the engagement, then there is nothing that you're going to do when you get married for them to be better or to improve. So coming to this about being self-aware. Self-awareness is a journey, and particularly in this case, you know, we have grown up in a society, in an environment whereby we have not been taught to be aware of ourselves. What do I mean? You've been brought up by maybe a parent who wants to reflect themselves in you. You know, there is a life they never lived. There is what they expected to achieve in life, they never achieved. So they push their kids to be. So by the time you're growing up, you're a replica of somebody else's dream. You have grown up in a society that has been telling you, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. You know, you have grown up in an environment of instructions. You're just a mechanical being told, do this, do that, do this, do that. You are never given a chance to discover yourself. So understanding yourself begins first with self-discovery. You have found yourself there, you're already there, maybe you're already in marriage, or you're in this serious relationship, you have gotten to this far. First thing is you open up yourself to self-criticism first. Criticize yourself, the decisions you make, you know, the choices you make, places you go, all these things that you do. Be open to self-criticism. Number two, be open to criticism from other people. Don't lock yourself out and in defense, and when people tell you you're doing this wrong or you're not getting this right, you go into fight. Be open to criticism. And then number three, be open to improvement. Once you realize there is an issue, there is a problem, maybe how I relate with people is not very good. My social skills are poor. You know, my decision-making skills or my ability to make decisions without impairment is low. How I control my anger, my temper, and all these things is not really how I should be doing. Then work on it. Work on improving it. I normally tell people life is about commitment. Not only commitment to the other party that you're with, maybe in a relationship or in a marriage, but also commitment to yourself. Commitment to improve, commitment to become better, and commitment to grow. If you're not committed to those, to improving yourself and to growing, then again, it becomes an issue because you will never discover yourself. You might be aware of yourself at one stage, but remember, as you say, life is a moving target. Things are changing. So as life is changing, how am I changing my self-awareness? Am I aware of the changes? Am I aware of the processes that are going inside within me, and what I'm going through. So it's a continuous process. There is no point that you can reach and say, I'm fully aware of myself, so I don't want any other engagement in terms of self-awareness.
And maybe just one other thing, maybe could you comment on the fact that some couples or some people individually argue that maybe the way that I behave in relationships is based on how I saw my parents do, or the marriage or family setup at home growing up, right? Yeah. And sometimes they are locked and tied to that, and others don't actually know maybe that might be the cause, whereby you find perhaps growing up they were raised by a single parent. It could have been a mom who was trying to find relations, a stable relationship, and unfortunately was meeting a few men here and there, and that affected this particular individual who has now grown up and tends to think, because maybe they've lacked a father figure, and they've seen their parents in a particular light, always going and looking for something stable, they misinterpret that and see that it's okay to actually be meeting with so many different men. So maybe you can comment generally on the upbringing and the setup of, because nowadays, you know, families are not perfect. We currently see in the media every day this thing about being a baby mama is actually cool, baby daddy is actually cool, but what the effect it's going to have on that child 15, 20 years from today is something that will also affect how those relationships will turn out in the future.
One, we are really in a very challenging time when we are throwing away the very moral principles that were guiding humanity. Maybe they could be traditional or Christian or any kind of religious values, again, because of the socialization, the globalization issue. And we are picking at this point whereby people are looking at it is like, you know, I was having some discussion with the people that was telling them the social media conversation today is on who is hooking up with who is breaking up with who, and it has become a norm. And we are raising up a very dangerous generation that is growing up knowing people should break up anytime, they should hook up anytime, they should do this, you know, which should not be the right case. So coming back to how we are brought up, I will say these two things. Number one, they are bringing us a very important bearing on somebody's life. But then also number two is about how we interpret it. Because at times we'll find these situations whereby 3 children or 2 children be brought up in the same environment, exactly the same, maybe a drunken father. One goes on to become a drunkard like their father. When you ask them, they say, I saw my dad do it. Now another one goes completely opposite and decides, I will never take alcohol. When you ask them, they say, I saw my dad do it. So how they interpret the same scenario again makes the difference. Yeah. So what I can say is, in as far as the environment has a wide impact, and we don't have choice of environment when we are young, how we were brought up, where we were born, we don't have choice over that. Maybe your child or my child may not have a choice of how they want to be brought up. But when you get to a point where by now we are talking about self-awareness, you've grown, you've gone to that point of you're no longer a child, nobody's making your decisions for you, you're grown up, you're an adult to make your own decisions, then you should be open to look back, make decisions, reinterpret those environments that you went through, and then, of course, mirror yourself with those other relationships that were working. Maybe you're brought up in a family whereby there was no love. Look at those other people that maybe their families are working well, their children are working well. Learn from them. So make a decision for yourself in as far as how you're brought up has had impact on you. Make a decision to change, of course, and decide your own course of life.
Right. Okay, so I'm being told we have only 3 minutes, and there's quite a number of comments that have been streaming in. I'll just read a couple because of time, and there's one question here. So it says, this question, I'm Alan. Thank you, Alan, for watching. What of this situation whereby your man, no, this is someone else, your man accesses your phone, Messenger, WhatsApp, Facebook, SMS, then go beyond chatting with your friends, especially male friends, also going further, picking contacts and calling them. So this is her partner, her boyfriend perhaps, who is going through the phone, and not just that, also replying and going ahead to chat and so on. So, and I'm being told there's no time. Maybe that question can be answered briefly. The next is, hello, please connect me to the council. I need help. Okay, there you go. So somebody will be, of course, in touch with you. Joyce from Baringo, the show is interesting. Thank you, Joyce, for watching. Hey, does age matter in a relationship? That's another question. So there are 2 important questions there. Maybe very briefly before we go and end the show. Maybe I can start with yourself.
Okay, I would say for the first one, I may not take so much time on it. I think that's an immature person. Any person who interferes with your privacy, remember I talked about you need to be individuated. You need to be complete and be ready to get into a relationship, not because the other person is bringing anything which you don't have. You are just going there to complement each other and become a better whole people. So I think that one, maybe it's all about exiting that particular relationship because it is already toxic. And salvaging it from that, I think it's not an easy thing because that is not someone who looks responsible. The other one about age, I think age matters. From a counseling point of view, age matters, especially where the difference is wide. But now you can reduce the negative or the negative impact that can have on the relationship by having the candid conversation before it happens. It becomes worse when you find yourself there and you didn't know it matters. And these things, they vary from one individual to another. So the issue is not really the difference, but the understanding between this person and this person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe quite briefly, if you can even give, as you answer those two questions, a parting shot. And I'll also give an opportunity, and then we'll end the show.
For the first question about somebody just accessing your phone and then sending messages and texting and doing all this other thing, I think that's a classic case of lack of civility, because even if I find maybe my partner is having some engagement somewhere, I should be civil enough to engage them as a person, not just to put the extra beyond and engage that other party. So it's a question of somebody who is not civil enough, somebody who is not mature enough. And if you get into a long-term relationship with such a person, be sure to suffer stress, proper stress, because it's also a question of mistrust. They don't trust you. Outrightly, they don't trust you. That's why they're trying to get some information from that other third party that they think you're concealing. Now, on the issue of age, I will say age may matter or may not matter, depending on a number of things. One of them being culture, number two being how you've been brought up, and then number three, depending on how you reason, your ability to reason out. So it's a question that needs to be sat down, you talk about it, discuss about it, and then also let's not, of course, encourage, even if you're saying the age and the other issue, when there is a very huge gap. For instance, we had a case of somebody who is 83, I think is it 83 or 93, somewhere in Kilifi marrying a 13-year-old girl. That definitely will matter, because those are two people living in two different worlds, and they can't really relate in any other way. So basically, I will say this, that we have talked about emotional infidelity. It's a serious thing, serious in that in as far as at the start it might be innocent. Anybody who is going through it, or you think you are in that stage of whereby you are emotionally engaged to third parties or people outside your relationship, you should consider terminating them as soon as possible, because they will evolve into something bigger and they will bring so many issues that you won't be able to manage.
Excellent. And yourself, 1 minute or less, please. Parting shot.
No problem. Yeah, I think this is a very interesting topic, and I think emotional infidelity is a choice. It doesn't just happen. It has its, you know, the way it occurs. The same way it happens by choice, it can be stopped by choice. But again, let's be sober when we are dealing with it. And as we have said, first understand yourself, take care of yourself through self-awareness and self-care and self-love. But most importantly, understand you are a complete person. And I do believe this is not an issue that cannot be solved. It can be solved where there is willingness on the two sides.
Excellent. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time. Of course, that has been a very, very insightful conversation there, a topic which can go on and on and on, because genuinely it is quite engaging, interesting. We go through it every other day. It's something we discuss. And I'd like to take this chance to thank you personally, of course, Samson Mung'athia, for joining us once again, as you've always been a frequent right here on this show. And of course, Samuel Kanja. Thank you very much for your time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time I had with you for this particular show. Until next time, of course, I've been your host, Lucy Riley, and up next is Winnie Lubembe with the 1 o'clock news, and later at 4 and 7, we'll be having Milia Kisienya, and I'll be back with you at 9 p.m. for the 9 o'clock news. Thank you for joining us. Continue to engage with us on all social media platforms. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.